So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in the last couple videos I did detailed breakdowns of exactly how I made out these solar generators. So, you know, after you watch this video, if you're interested in exactly how those are done, you can go and see those videos up on my channel, yeah? But in this video today, I'm going to kind of walk through, if you're doing stealth camping out of the back of a vehicle and that kind of thing, you know, you're wanting to be low-key, or you're using this when you're out in the backcountry and that kind of thing, of being able to cook food and run lights and that kind of stuff. I thought I'd stop and do kind of a more detailed video of the capacity and usefulness I have at these two different rigs. So give me 2 seconds here, I'll change camera angles and kind of get my poop in a group, and I'll shift to the next scene, yeah? Okay, so with this larger rig that I've built out, I primarily use this to be able to run a couple USB devices and to be able to run 12 volts like a cigarette lighter adapter, plug-in, that kind of thing. So I've got a 12 volt cooking pot here. I've shown this in previous videos, and I'm simply just going to take that and I'm going to plug it in and kick the power on. Now I'll see if I can catch this on camera good. The light lit up. I'm just on a tripod right now, so the light lit up on the 12 volts, so it lets me know it's taking the juice. And as you can see, I've got a voltmeter here that will show me the exact details of where the battery's at when it comes to voltage and that kind of stuff, yeah? But either way, this thing's just gonna start warming up now. I can already feel it getting warm on the touch of my hand, but I just want to get my dinner going here, if you will. So for simplicity's sake, I just brought along a couple cans, you know, and this is a great way if you're doing vehicle camping, or if you're out in the backcountry, then you don't want to have to get fires going and you want to be low-key and fairly quick and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, especially if you're doing stealth vehicle camping, using a 12 volt appliances like this is definitely a solid option. Just give me 2 seconds here. I'll pull out my trusty multi-tool cooking utensils. Just set that down. And I think I've shown that little device in previous videos, but really it's just a fork, knife, and a spoon all kind of tied together, almost like a cigarette lighter, or I mean almost like a pocket knife, sorry. And just makes it easy to have cooking utensils when I'm out in the field and those types of things readily available, just kind of, you know, in pocket, if you will. I'm just going to add in a splash of water to this, and it's pretty well just that simple. Give it a stir to kind of mix that water in. Now in about half an hour or so, this meal will be cooked and ready to eat, if you will, especially with canned food. Now if you're dealing with, you know, uncanned, if you will, raw foods and those types of things, you cook for a little longer, but in this example with the canned food, it's pretty quick. But you can see it's really simple for me to turn around and cook off a meal. And I've got a few of these different devices. I got little saucepans and frying pans and those types of things. In previous videos I've shown a little small scale oven and that type of thing. So, you know, depending on what it is I'm wanting to cook when I'm out in the field and those types of things, I can definitely cook a variety of different things, all based off the 12 volt. But like I say, I'll just let this run and shift to the next stage, because I want to get some power into this other battery bank and kind of show you the options I have in that, yeah? Alright, well, if you hear a bit of noise in the background, I'm in farm country right now and there's a few people in the area, so needless to say you might hear a bit of noise in the background, such as life, right? But now this is the smaller generator unit that is all USB based, and when it comes to both these devices that I've built out, I can use MC4 connectors off full-size solar panels and plug them in. But with this smaller, more kind of portable, easy to carry unit, I can also plug in USB-C here. So my thinking really is, if you've watched previous videos of mine, you've seen these little folding solar panels that I use quite often when I'm out in the field and those types of things. But these are 30 watt solar panels. Renogy puts them out. I don't know if they still make them anymore, but they're 30 watt E-Flex, they were called. And like I say, I'm not 100% certain that they're still made, but they're definitely good little units for when it comes to the power production that they do put out. And they've got little kickstands here on them. So I'm just going to set this up to the side of the truck here. I'll shift camera angles and I'll just wire this up, yeah? So like I say, these are just little 30-watt USB solar panels, and they're really handy if you're wanting to charge devices and you don't want to carry the batteries or anything when you're out in the field. But it's got a little USB plug-in, so I'm just going to plug in my USB-C cable directly into that. Now that I'm simply going to turn around and plug in to the USB-C connector that exists here, and that's taking a charge. It's really as simple as that. Now quite often, in order to monitor my power, I use this little device. It kind of gives me an idea. I'm just going to unplug this for a second. I'm going to plug this in now, and it gives me an idea of how much power is going to be going into those batteries. So I'll just plug that in and set that down. Now I'll shift camera angles and I'll show you the readings off that, yeah? All right, well, hopefully the camera's picking that up all right. But you can see up in the top left where it says 5.21 volts. That's what's coming off of these solar panels currently. You know, it's later in the day. We're up around 6:30, 7 o'clock right now. But in the bottom left, you'll see it says 1.46 amps. So that tells me kind of the rate at which I'm charging the batteries up, yeah? And then it'll tell me the amount of time that it's been going up in the top right. And then it'll tell me the milliampere hours. So how much charge is actually being thrown into the batteries as we speak, if you will. So that just gives me a rough gauge. I can watch that meter and it'll tell me, you know, these are little $3 USB meters that you can pick up on eBay and that type of stuff. You know, they're pretty cheap and readily available, that kind of stuff. But either way, it gives me a good gauge to how much power that I'm throwing into this little battery bank. So I'll just let this go and kind of take a bit of a charge. I'll show the lighting in a little bit when, you know, it gets later in the night. But then we'll shift back and see where the dinner is at, yeah? Okay, so this has been going for about 15-20 minutes maybe now, but you can see definitely lots of, you know, condensation on the roof of the container. Bit of steam starting to come off. So, you know, these are fairly efficient in that regard. A bit of boiling, hopefully the camera's seeing that, where we're starting to get a simmer happening, right? Always a good sign. So I kind of just give that a bit of a stir and do a faithful pinky test. Now in my mind, this is already hot enough where I could eat it and have a hot meal, if you will. I'll cook it a bit more just to make sure there's no cool spots throughout it. But you can see, like I say, in 20 minutes or so, to bring up that can of soup to the point where I could have a hot meal. I mean, when it's drawing off this battery, it's pulling about 120 watts. I'll just put the lid back on. So this is pulling about 120 watts, 130 watts worth of power. So within reason, this is a 100 ampere hour battery, and I'm pulling about 10 amps per hour. So I'd be able to cook food for 10 hours non-stop off of a single charge of this battery before I'd have to refill it back up with solar panels, yeah? And like I say, I've got the MC4 connectors on here. I've got a little solar panel sitting in the back here, and wire that up and show you guys as the example. But I could definitely cook for multiple days off of a single charge of this, when you can see it only takes 20-30 minutes to heat up a can of food, right? So needless to say, this is kind of a very low-key, energy efficient. You know, at 20 minutes you're not even using a full 10 amps off the battery. You know, you're pulling what, maybe 3.5 amps off this battery, off a 100 amp battery. You know, it's you got plenty of room to cook a lot of meals in this kind of construct. And with the solar panels I have, I believe that's a 50-watt solar panel, if I remember correctly. Got a little while ago. But it'll throw in about 4.5-5 amps per hour back into the battery. To give you kind of an idea, generally speaking, if I was using this out in the field for kind of extended use, then it really was my, you know, main permanent solution that I was using to cook with and all that kind of stuff. Instead of having a little 50-watt solar panel, I'd probably switch up to a 200-watt just to make sure that I was producing, you know, ample amounts of power to be able to cook easily every day. And if there was a couple gray days, you know, with bad weather and that type of stuff, I'd still be able to cook, you know. But in this example, you can see very discreet. how quickly it brought that up to temperature. If I was cooking for 2 or 3 people, you know, it would take you a little bit longer, but this gives you definitely a good idea, right? And as you can see, we're back to a simmer again. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. I'll shift my camera angle a bit. But you can see, already at a simmer, and we're not even at the half-hour point. So I'll stop here and shift camera angles again, yeah? So like I say, for my lens, this is already to the point where it's cooked enough in my books. No, there's no sense in wasting the power. So I'm just gonna unplug that again and kill the power, yeah? Now I'm gonna stop for a minute and have myself this soup, and then I'll kind of have a further natter. And maybe I'll shift locations. It's a little busier here than I thought it would be. There's a lot of people out. It's a Saturday night kind of thing, right? So there's a lot of people out doing stuff in the area I'm in. But oh yeah, that's piping hot. But I'll stop and eat the soup, and then I'll kick back. Well, before I even go off and eat the soup, I'll just show you these. I'll just set that aside. Check my camera angle here. Yeah, maybe I'll give you a tweak and step back a little bit. So now when it comes to the solar panels, typically when I'm out in the backcountry and that type of thing, I tend to bring along a flexible solar panel. So I've shown this in previous videos. This is a 50-watt solar panel. It's about, I don't know, 2.5 foot by 2 foot square. So, you know, not a huge object when it comes to things. You know, if I was doing stealth camping and really wanting to be covert out of the back of the truck, I'd probably have these solar panels sitting on the roof of the truck all together, and then just feed them in through the window that connects through the cab to the front, yeah? But either way, I'll just turn this now. Like I say, I've got the MC4 connectors. It's really just as simple as plugging those in. And now that thing's taking a charge. And I'll just grab the tripod. I know I'm breaking every rule of tripod use there is under the sun, but this was kind of an unplanned video. I just thought it's been a little bit since I've done stuff. So, and as you can see, I've just kind of set that solar panel out. And when it comes, you know, as always, when it comes to any solar panels that you're using, you definitely want to have them out in full direct sun. I just wanted to show you as the example of that could easily be tossed onto the top of a car or the top of a truck and that kind of thing if you were wanting to be stealth and low-key, where you just park somewhere, you toss that on the top and fit it in through a window and let your batteries charge, yeah? But either way, gives you kind of an idea of how you're maintaining your power supply as you go through time. Like I say, the USB bank and then this little 50-watt solar panel, they really don't take up a lot of real estate. You can see it in comparison to the size of the tire. You know, these aren't large items. And, you know, when it comes to, like I say, this 50-watt solar panel, I could easily turn around instead of plugging in this panel the way I have into the little folder, and I could easily plug the MC4s directly into there as well. And like I say, I go through full details of exactly how I built out both these solar generators. But this smaller unit here is mainly used for the lighting systems and that kind of thing, right? And being able to charge and power devices. And generally speaking, I like to have this unit for when I want to be mobile and, you know, I want to go out into the backcountry and just kind of tote it along with me as I go, right? Whereas this unit is more kind of, it's larger, it's heavier. This thing weighs around 30 pounds, give or take, you know, so it's one of those things of, it's got a bit more weight to it. I'd rather use this more for truck camping, you know, that stealth vehicle camping, that kind of thing. And like I say, the USB plugs do give me the option. I just can't go out to as many USB devices and throw the amps the same out of this setup as I can out of the smaller, more portable setup that really is aimed specifically towards USB, whereas this is more, generally speaking, if I wanted to plug in a light or two and cook some meals. But I'm not getting the fast charging that I would off of the other setup. This only offers 2.1 amps, whereas the other setup, I think the devices were 4 or 5 amps that they could throw, so they definitely were high-powered devices, right? But like I say, I'm going to stop at this point in time and eat my soup, yeah? Well, as you can see, that never lasted long, so needless to say, just use a bit of water and a bandana to kind of give it a scrub out, and we're back to being able to throw that in the bag. So these things are really easy when it comes to maintenance and that kind of stuff. I'll just In fact, there's a bit of condensation there. I'll just set that aside and let that dry out a bit and just get this thing back together. And I've had this one for a long time. It's getting to the end of its days, I think, but such is life. But these just kind of clip and set in place. And as you can see, it becomes like a little pocket knife. Yeah, I can just throw in my pocket, but you can also see it's been warped and stuff over the years of use, right? So needless to say, such is life. But I feel like it's a little noisy here, and I already dealt with a cairn, so I'm going to stop, have a bit of water, and then I'm going to switch locations and see if I can find a better place to set up this lighting. Yeah. All right, well, I've shifted to a new location, and I'm just gonna show the example now of the lighting system. So what I've got running in here is just a cable that runs to the far end of the cap of the truck, if you will, where it's really just USB that is connected by extension cords. And I've found, generally speaking, a lot of people think, oh, you can only run USB like 5-10 feet, right? Well, I found that I can run these out to about 15-18 feet or so before it starts to really drop off the power. But now with this USB battery bank that I have, I'll bring this up close and hopefully show that in detail. Of, like I say, I'm just in another parking lot in the city, so but I've got 4 USB connections that sit here now, and these are all fast charge capable, so this thing can throw more USB power, if you will. But so what I'll do is I'll just plug in a couple of these devices to show you the kind of level of production that I can get. Yeah, so when it comes to plugging these in, I want to have it where that you guys can see that little voltmeter thing that I have for the USB. I want you guys to be able to see that as we move forward in time to see how much power is being drawn. But one of the key things I've done with these extension cord runs is I've got little on-off switches that I can set either at the battery or up by the light. So I've got the kind of options to turn around and control my lighting source. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Let's see. I don't know if the camera's seeing that at all, but yeah, the camera's picking it up, all right? So you can see I can be sitting with my head down at this end, say, and have the switch and have the light down at the far end and be able to just toggle those with ease. Yeah. And when it comes to the ability to kind of run multiple lines, like I say, I could easily hook on 4 of these that all have their own independent lines running and just plug that in, and that's now on its own separate line where, like I say, on off power switch there. And you know, with each one of these, you know, about 15-18 feet, if I'm using this in a camp, I can set these up on ridge lines or on trees in the area around me and light up the whole zone. You know, even if it's not just for stealth camping out of the back of a vehicle. I mean, obviously I can use it in that context, but they're flexible in that regard, where I can easily have multiple devices running all at the same time. And I'll shift camera angles and I'll wire one of these in so you guys can see the power draw that's coming off these. And the reason why I've set these up the way I have is these are the light bulbs. Like I say, I'm going to keep checking the camera to make sure I'm getting this, you know, justifiably, but these little light bulbs are only little $2 units. You know, they're super cheap. You can get these off eBay. They're little 3-watt light bulbs. I like using the 3 watts, especially when you're doing stealth camping in the back of a vehicle. You don't want to be creating too much light, or you can be noticed. This is just a 10-foot extension cord of USB. And then, like I say, these little on-off switches, they're really just another extension cord that goes about 8-10 foot or so as well. So in reality, this whole line's probably running over 20 feet, to be quite honest, now that I think of it. But you can see they've just got little toggle on-off switches, and these are only like $4 or $5 each on eBay. They're cheap items to buy. Yeah. But what I'll do is I'll kind of rewire this up. I'll shift my camera angles and I'll show you the power consumption that's coming off of these to run one of these light bulbs. Yeah. Okay, so like I say, this is running that light bulb that's in the cap of the truck here. So I don't know if the camera's making it out that well, but we're sitting at 5.09 volts at 0.31 amps. So, you know, realistically, this thing's pulling about 2.5 watts, to give you an idea, right? And like I say, this little device is handy if I want to kind of leave this running. It'll tell me the time, and it'll tell me the milliamps that I've pulled off this battery as I've moved through time. So it's good in that regard, right? If it gives me a good bearing to how much power I'm consuming. You know, with these lights, they're super efficient. You know, even if they were running at 3 times the amount, if I was running 5-watt lights, I'd be okay with that too, right? You know, it's one of those things where to be running 0.31 amps is nothing. You know, when it comes to plugging in multiples of these now, you know, I can do that without even worrying about putting excessive load onto the batteries. So what I'll do now, though, is I'll turn around and plug in my cell phone and show that all of these ports do fast charging, and I'll show you how the voltage and the amperage changes, and I'll plug in really as much as I possibly can that I have with me, just to show you that, you know, you can pull a fair bit off these this small battery stack. Like I say, it's a 3.2 volt battery with a 100 ampere hour capacity that sits within it. So obviously when you step up to 5 volt, the amount of usable amps will drop a bit because you're boosting the voltage up, and volts times amps equals watts and that kind of thing. But there's 320 watts for the power that sits within this box. Now for a small package, it's definitely got a lot of power to it. But like I say, let me rewire things a bit and I'll show you the fast charging on the meter. All right, well, as you can see, I've wired in just both these lights now, where I can easily toggle them on or off, all independently from each other. You know, it's handy in that regard of, and like I say, having the cord broken out the way I do, it allows me to kind of rewire it if I want to have this switch closer to the light, or if I want to have it closer to the battery. It really depends on how I'm setting up my camp, or how I'm setting up the back of the truck and that kind of thing. But as you can see, you know, it's easy enough to turn around and hook up, you know, 4 of these lights and just use this purely as a lighting system and have it cover a half decent range of territory, if you will. You know, even if I wasn't just in the back of the truck stealth camping or that kind of thing. You know, when I'm out in a camp, this can become really handy when I can set up 4 lights that, you know, 20 foot one way, 20 foot another, blah blah blah, and I can light up on an entire region. You know, when I'm doing bushcraft videos and those types of things, which hopefully I'll get out and get one of those done soon. I know it's been a while, I'm sorry people, but hopefully I'll get one of those done soon. But needless to say, after I'm done, you know, the video, normally I'll sit around camp and do all the video editing and stuff, because it's still not too late in the night, right? You know, and I want to light up the area so I can just kind of muck about in my day and that kind of thing. But that's all side issue stuff. But either way, you can see I could easily turn around and hook up these 2 lights. I could put a USB hub that splits off and went out to multiple lights. I'm just not going to get the same power draw. You know, these ports that I've done on this solar generator, these were all done with fast charging in mind. You know, being able to charge tablets, being able to charge phones and that kind of stuff rapidly. You know, running the lights and stuff really isn't a high demand item, you know, especially with the lighting I use. That and the way I've set it up, you know, those are little $2 disposable LED light bulbs. You know, I can buy those at about $1, $2 a piece off eBay. So, and that's normally what I'll do, is I'll just order a bag of those if you won't get a dozen at a time, and as they burn out, I'll just kind of toss them as I go, kind of thing, right? There really are disposable units, just like a normal at-home light bulb would be. But you could use this kind of setup, you know, easily in stealth shelters, in stealth camping, you know, backcountry, all that kind of stuff. And you can tell, you know, the ease in which I'm able to pick this up and just tote it around. There's nothing to it. You know, that whole setup with the 50-watt solar panel, you know, this setup, to give you an idea of, I can charge the batteries in this from dead to full off of that 50-watt solar panel that I have there in about, you know, realistically about 10 hours. You know, maybe 12 if the lighting's not really that fantastic. So it doesn't take a long time to kind of, you know, get that stuff and running, you know, fully charged, if you will. And when it comes to these light bulbs now, because they are such an efficient light bulb, you know, with these lights, I can run these for because these are only 2.5 3-watt light bulbs, I could run them for days and days and days and days, 24 hours a day, you know, without having to recharge the batteries. It really does give me kind of a stable power supply moving through time. And even if the weather turns shoddy and the solar panels aren't working full bore, you know, that kind of stuff, this battery has a deep enough cycle to it that I can reliably run these lights for days and not have to worry about inclemental weather and all that stuff. But needless to say, I'll turn around and plug in my cell phone here and shift the camera angles. I'm just not used to working with this new tripod I got. Normally when I do bushcraft videos, I just whip one together out of some sticks. You've probably seen that if you've watched previous videos, but I'm getting used to this new tripod to get the angles that I want to get. Is just taking me a bit, whatever. But I'll shift camera angles here and I'll go back to this little voltmeter I have here, and I'll show you how it adjusts to give the fast charging on the cell phones, yeah? And unfortunately, I just didn't bring along my tablet, or I plugged that in as well. But in testing at home, I've plugged in 2 different iPhones, a Samsung tablet, and a Samsung phone, and all 4 of them were fast charging at faster rates. You know, when I plugged in my kids' phones, they were just shocked. This was charging at faster rates than the kids' phones they've ever seen them charge. So now they just want to use this when we're at home all the time regardless, right? I've kind of shot myself in the foot that way, but such is life. But yeah, I'll shift camera angles and I'll show you the amount of power that it'll draw for the cell phones and that, yeah. Okay, so we're back to the meter now. I'll just plug in my cable to that, grab my phone, and hopefully you guys will be able to hear the bing. So it's taking the bing, and it normally takes a second for the fast charging to kick in, but you can see now, hopefully the camera's picking that up, where it's now drawing at 8.97 volts, 98 volts, at 0.87 amps. So you can see the voltage jumps up when it goes to do these fast charging into the phones, yeah? So we're up to 9 volts at 72 or 0.72 amps, right? So, and as you can see on the phone, hopefully I'll catch this all right. I'll just shift that back. As you can see on the phone, I'm fast charging, yeah? Sorry. As you can see on the phone, I'm fast charging. So I can have it where all the devices are fast charging all at the same time. You know, this technology is able to handle the fast charging protocols with ease, right? And like I said, I've had it where I've charged up my cell phone, my tablet, and both my kids' iPhones all at the same time, and they were all taking a rapid charge. This device is really, really handy for that. You know, if you're running USB, you're not just limited to the slower, you know, charging USB. When I'm out in the field, you know, when I'm charging GoPro batteries and all that kind of stuff, actually I tend to have moved away from that as of late, to be quite honest. But normally I'd want to charge those GoPro batteries really quickly when I was out in the field, and having something like this allowed me to do that. But since then, I've actually ditched the idea of even using GoPro batteries entirely. I'll just shift back a bit here on the camera, and I've shown this little battery bank in previous videos, the Bear Grylls 20,000 milliampere hour battery. It's a lithium ion battery, so it's not quite as good as these lithium iron phosphate generators like I've built here. But I'm actually recording this video powering it directly off this little USB battery bank here, you know, and like I say, it's got 4 USBs and stuff on there as well. It's quite a good device. So if you don't want to get into, you know, kind of building your own and that kind of stuff, there are things like this that are commercially available. I just wanted to build this out where it has 5 times the capacity of this battery, and it's built with different battery technology itself. This is using the lithium iron phosphate. This is using lithium ion batteries. So these get about 1,000 charges, you know, maybe 1,500 at best, whereas this thing's rated for like 4,000 cycles. I'll be able to use this on a daily basis, dead to full, 100% of the battery's capacity, and be able to use that for well over the next 10 years without issue. Whereas this thing, you know, if I use this daily, I'd be lucky to get about, you know, maybe 5 to 8 years use tops. Whereas this one, if I really look after it and I don't drain it all the way to 0 and fill it back up to 100 every time, and I kind of keep the battery range in between about 20% to 80%, I could easily get about 20 years worth of use out of this. So, you know, it was really built to be a long-term investment for when I'm out in the field and not have to replace it as I move through time. Or if I do, even with the way I built it and designed it, it was all done in a modular context where I could pop out parts and add on new ones. But hopefully this video is giving you kind of a bit of information when it comes to, you know, running lighting systems that aren't too heavy and, you know, do have that kind of durability and longevity and all that kind of stuff. I'll shift camera angles and I'll start to wrap this video up, yeah? Well, so like I say, this was kind of in-field example of these different solar generators that I've built over the last couple videos that I've put out. This one primarily, like I say, I see this as more for truck camping, you know, stealth camping out of a vehicle, that kind of stuff, where you've got the ability to carry this kind of larger, heavier component, if you will. And having the 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter really gives me the ability to cook. You know, like I said, I do have some USB plug-ins on here. They only go to 2.1 amps, whereas this one, I can't remember the circuitry. I thought it was 5, but you know, I want to say 4 because I don't want to call it too much on the amps on that. But needless to say, this little USB battery bank does put out a lot more amps towards the USB than this option does. And don't get me wrong, I can still turn around and let me just unplug the lighting system that I have here, and I could still turn around and it's always the war of the wires when it comes to this stuff. Plug this in over on this side and run my lighting system just the same. You know, there's not going to be any difference, but I'm now out of USB, you know, ports that I can plug into without moving up to having USB hubs and those types of things, which I have. But even when I use those, I found that if I put 4 lights out onto the line and only come off one of these outputs of the USB, the amp drops and the lights become a lot dimmer because I'm just not drawing the power through this 2.1 amp socket, if you will, that I would if they were all on their own dedicated lines and that kind of thing, right? But it does still, as you can see, when it comes to stealth vehicle camping and that type of stuff, you know, I can still run lights and cook food at the same time. I just can't turn around and run multiple lights, cook food, and be able to charge, you know, my devices up and get the fast charging and all that kind of stuff. You know, the USB pays the price when I'm doing the stealth camping in the vehicles if I want to have the capacity to cook. And it's not that the battery's not powerful enough or anything, you know, none of that business. It's really to do with the circuitry I got in this. And in the video where I did this build, you know, this output units that you see here, they were only like $20 units, right? So it was cheap and it was what was readily available, but like I say, it did have its limitations. Whereas when it comes to this, you know, device, like I say, I'm easily able to carry that in one hand. You know, it's not a sweat to carry this and move it around. And it's all waterproof and it's all sealed. And the way I designed it was to be rugged for out in the field when I'm in the backcountry and I'm trugging through the bush and I'm wanting to set up a base camp where I'm running lights and able to power my cameras and devices and those types of things. You know, typically when I'm out in the backcountry, I'm burning fires and I'm cooking wood, you know, cooking with wood, rather than wanting to be stealthy and sneaky and running off 12-volt plugins and all those types of things. But you know, either way, these different setups have their place in my perspective in what you're doing when you're out in the field. Quite often, even if I do go into the backcountry, this will be sitting in the back of the truck where, you know, and I'll take this with me now that I have these both built, that this can easily be just my backup at the truck. You know, if this fails or this dies or I'm having a hard time cooking food or anything else, if I can make it back to my vehicle, I've got this as a fallback, and you know, it's a secondary power supply. You know, and it's like with anything, I like to have kind of redundancy in my kit, right? But that's one of the things I do like about this little USB setup. This right here is a complete setup. You know, I'm holding that in one hand easily. You know, and I can take that with me into a base camp and use it for, like I say, years and years and years without having to worry about the battery dying or any of that business. The likelihood of that happening is really slim. You know, same with this. The battery I used in here is lithium iron phosphate. It's rated for the 4,000 cycles and all that happiness. You know, this gear is designed to last for a long time. The only limiting factor about any of using this the way I've built them, and it's really to do with the climate I live in, doesn't go below zero often, but lithium iron phosphate batteries don't like to be charged when it's below freezing. You know, so if you live in an area where it's really cold, then you might want to look at getting the batteries that have the heating elements in them as a safety protection to be able to charge when you're in sub-zero, you know, minus or sorry, 32 Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius. Once you get below those temperatures, you have to either use the heating elements, and that type of thing, or just not charge them when you're in sub-zero conditions, if you will. But that's really the only limitation. And in the region I live in, maybe 1 or 2 days out of the year actually goes below 0, so I'm not concerned about it. It's not really a major factor in my days. But I'll wrap it up here because I know I get wordy. But if you enjoy this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Yeah, cheers.